Our next guest is a very talented non-binary Eenou pop musician from the Misstissini Cree Nation in Quebec. Siibii, which means river in the Eastern James Bay Cree language, recently released their self-titled EP late last year. It's a collection of songs and melodies that talk about what it's like navigating life as a young Indigenous person who identifies as a non-binary trans person. One of those songs on that album is titled Yoy. It has now surpassed more than 1 million streams, while their other songs like Don't Wake Me Up and Stars have been streamed tens of thousands of times. In 2022, they received the CBC Searchlight Runner-Up Award, and they were Canada's Walk of Fame Emerging Musician Grand Prize winner. Siibii says they love to share who they are with the wider public, and they hope other queer and trans Eenou youth can look up to them. We recently spoke with Siibii, who made a stop in our APTN Montreal studio. Siibii, thank you so much for making some time for us. Can I first ask you about your name that you chose for yourself and the significance of that name? I understand that it helped guide you through discovering who you are.
Yes, absolutely. My name came after my first album, which was released as my dead name or my former artist name, which was Angel Barabo. For myself, I felt very disconnected to my birth name, not only for gender reasons, but also reasons related to my family. And because I had a lot of negative attachments to that name, I felt that I didn't want to carry it anymore. And it was actually another two-spirit trans non-binary person who asked me to consider the option of ever having a name that wasn't the one that was given to me. And I remember this was actually in Winnipeg at a youth conference, and they had asked me to consider like what name I would choose for myself if I just liked a name. And I remember kind of pondering that for a little while and remembering this boy in high school whose name was River. And I always thought that was such a cool name and something that I felt very connected to, because I've always felt connected to water. But I remember that specifically I wanted a name in Eenou. I wanted a name in my language. So I said Siibii, because Siibii means river. And I'm really glad that that person asked me to consider that, because that actually is what helped me decide that it's who I wanted to live as and the name that I wanted to live as. And yeah, I haven't looked back since.
Beautiful story. Thank you for that, Siibii. Everyone can agree here that you're very talented and you have a very beautiful voice. You just released your debut EP. Can you talk to us about some of the messages you wanted to convey in that album and why it's so important?
Oh yeah. So it's funny is that this EP sat in limbo for a really long time, and it sat in limbo for it took me about 5 years to release this debut EP as Siibii since my last project. And I remember like the years that I spent writing this project, I was kind of digesting and processing a lot of my own growth and my own trauma and my own stories that I needed to heal from, and also understanding my own identity. So it's funny as I think about how when I was speaking to other labels, not my current label, but other labels about the project, all I could tell them was like, oh, this project is a culmination of like years of therapy. And apparently a lot of labels don't like that. But truly, I was spending a lot of my mental and spiritual energy digesting and processing the stories that you hear in the project. Like Don't Wake Me Up was about my parents and their relationship and how toxic that was, but also in writing that song I recognized that I was repeating the same cycles that I was writing about. Mm-hmm. So for myself, I decided that I was gonna, instead of making the project a second person or third person perspective, I wanted to make it in the first person perspective. Yep. And that kind of was a little daunting, because it was a little bit unavoidable that I'm living through that I was living through those same stories that my parents were living through. So that's one. I know that another one that I wrote with Siibii and Sansero, a song called Body to Body, that one was specifically to express sexuality and sensuality as Indigenous folks and a healthy expression of that. I wanted to write that and create that piece of work because I didn't really feel like I saw a lot of healthy expressions of sexual love or sensuality when it came to relationships in my communities, relationships in my family, and I guess just representation of healthy relationships for Indigenous folks generally. So that was really where I was coming from for Body to Body. And now I call it my snaggin' song.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so the whole project really was a culmination of like working through these stories that I'd been carrying for a really long time. And yeah, I've always wanted to be the reason that there's more Native babies in the world.
Yeah, no, that's great. Siibii, I also read that you found out that you were diagnosed with autism and ADHD a few years ago, and through that process, you learned about acceptance and to be less hard on yourself. Is that another message you want others who live with a disability to know?
Absolutely. I think that it's way more common than people realize. I think that there's so many people who, especially in our communities, well, I can only really speak for my community, but there are so many youth and adults who have gone and might continue to go their whole lives being undiagnosed. And as somebody who only got diagnosed at 23, I can tell you that it leaves a lot of questions, and it doesn't create a lot of space for you to be kind to yourself because you're comparing yourself to, for lack of a better word, like normal folks. And that's really hard. It's really hard when you don't meet the same standards that you see other people living through. I know it's complicated because of realities in the res, but I remember when I left my community, I thought that I had difficulty in college because of the quality of education that I received coming out of the res. But I actually came to realize that it wasn't just the quality of education that I received, but also the fact that I was undiagnosed and I was trying to swim and keep up with everybody who's experiencing the same courses and stuff that I was, but I was undiagnosed and I had no support or any sort of framework that would help support me as an Indigenous person and also somebody who's neurodiverse. So that was very difficult. And in my adulthood, coming to the understanding after getting the diagnoses has completely opened a door for myself to be more empathetic, more compassionate to myself, and recognizing that I will never perform the same way that maybe my peers will perform, but I function in the way that I can, and I show up in the way that I can for myself. And that's a totally new mentality for me to be in. Yeah. I'm very happy to have come to this point, and I want that for other people back home. I want to destigmatize neurodivergence for sure, because there is so much of it, and a lot of people are afraid to get their diagnosis or even ask the questions that they might be neurodivergent. And but there's so many of us, there's so many of our kids, there are so many adults as well. And they deserve that support just like I deserved that support.
Finally, Siibii, do you have any words of wisdom for other young Indigenous artists out there who want to get their music careers started?
Oh yeah. Okay, I was actually recently speaking to a young artist named Daryl Fox, incredible artist. And what I was telling him, he was asking about how to kind of get more shows and stuff, and he was preparing for live shows. And one thing that I really want to tell Indigenous folks is you have to use your network, and you have to I really want to encourage folks to participate in networks like the International Indigenous Music Summit. That for me was probably one of the most pivotal moments in my career, was interacting with them and then also accessing the community that they've created over the past few years. And I think that that's probably one of the biggest tools that I've received as an artist, as an Indigenous artist. And I want to see that community grow, and I want to see more young people entering that community and showcasing and interacting with Indigenous folks that come from all over the world. And I think it's just a great way to build your network and realize how vast Indigenous, how vast the Indigenous music scene is.
Totally, yeah. Siibii, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for chatting with us today, and please come back on the show again in the near future.
Heck yeah. Please, anytime you want, Creason.